Can you hear pretty well? Yeah. Okay, I feel like I'm shouting.
Please do.
Yeah. My name is Mary Hinton Fidler, and this is my husband, Noah. He's a Reverend Noah Fidler. He's quite famous in the area because of his preaching abilities. I have a story to tell about him. I'm not sure. I know he's buried here. I don't know where I'm buried exactly. I'm thinking it could be one of these over here, but it's not recorded. Mary Hinton Fidler is not recorded in the cemetery, but I know she did live here for 11 years after he passed away. So I'm thinking she probably is, but there's no record of actually. She died in 1860. And there's no record of where she was buried, but she had children that lived here, and there's still people in this area that live here that are related to them. But anyway, Mary Hinton Fidler, that's me. I was born in Rockingham County, Virginia, and that's where a lot of the people from, that came to Troy, Miami County, came from Virginia, Pennsylvania, moving west, and I met my husband when he was a circuit minister for the Methodist Church. He had three brothers, and Noah and two of his brothers became circuit riders. And what they did is they preached the gospel. They had a circuit, which was that area that they traveled, and they would travel about anywhere from 200 to 500 miles in one circuit. And they did this every month, or some of them were quarterly too, they said. But if you think about driving 500 miles now, these guys would ride on horseback 500 miles. So you can imagine how long that took. They also, my notes here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Noah before I get into the circuit riding thing. I kind of jumped the gun here. He was born in New Jersey, and his father's name was Timothy, his mother's name was Anna, and they were some of the first people that were interested in the Brethren Church and the Methodist Church, and John Wesley and his preachings. So, like I said, three of their sons became circuit riders, and Noah was one of them. He was the youngest one that was one of the circuit riders. They decided after they lived in New Jersey for a while that they wanted to move west, the family did. So they moved, they thought they were going to Maryland, and they were in a wagon train, and they thought they were in Maryland, but they found this area they really liked, so they stopped, and it actually was in Pennsylvania. It was about 4 miles. Okay.
Better?
I don't know. Can you hear better? Can you not hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, it's the traffic. It used to be wagon trains, I guess. Where was I here? Okay, they're in Pennsylvania now, and they lived in their wagon they had 8 children, and they lived in a wagon for a year when they were building their house in Pennsylvania. It was one of the biggest houses in Pennsylvania. If you've ever driven through Pennsylvania, you've seen houses still that are built out of the stone. Part of it was built out of stone. Very large house. It had 4 fireplaces on the first floor, and they built an especially big dining room because they wanted to have the church services at their home, Timothy and Anna. So I think that's how the children became so interested in the church and circuit riding, and that's what they wanted to do then. This farm was called Poplar Springs, and it stayed in the family for 6 generations. It burned to the ground in 1937. Fulton Farms actually bought it as a fruit orchard later on, and I think they still do that there now, or they still farm it there, but it's not, the building's gone, the cemetery's still there. Okay, now we're going to get on the circuit with all the guys riding. Noah was the youngest of the 3 boys that wanted to be the circuit riders, so he was younger, about 4 years younger than his oldest brother that went on the circuit, Reverend John. Daniel was the other one, and Noah was the third boy. They had one other brother, but he decided not to do that type of thing. Anyway, they rode the circuit. He was in the Baltimore circuit, and it was Virginia, Pennsylvania, and parts of West Virginia is what he would trail. It was kind of, they actually have some journals of his that said what the circuit was like, and he would, one time he said they went through over 5 rivers in one day to get to where they were going, and it was raining. They couldn't always find a place to stay. They had to camp out a lot of times, so they weren't always, undercover or anything, and they didn't get to the next place the next day. So it was pretty rugged what they did. They traveled very lightly. They had 1 or 2 sets of clothing with them. They always had their Bible and their hymnal, and they also had medical supplies with them, and not much else. They didn't get paid much either. They either had, they might get some chickens, or they might get some meat or vegetables or something from the people they were preaching with, but they really didn't get much money. There wasn't much money exchange in those times anyway. They traded a lot of things. One of his earliest records in the 1800s, there are some records of his that survived too, because that's what they took writing tools for correspondence and also to record what they were doing, so they could report back to the bishop and everything and let him know what was going on. Anyway, he said in one of his records that he described his listeners as getting the shakes as they were filled with the Spirit of the Lord. And he wasn't quite sure what that was, because they usually didn't do that in a Methodist church, but that was something that he described, and he thought that was really something. So he must have been a pretty good preacher. A little bit more about the circuit. It started in 1771, actually. It was a Methodist church that came up with this. Some of the other religious affiliations did the same type of thing. The Methodists really did a lot with that. It started with 4 preachers and 300 members, and that was the circuit in 1771. It ended about 1844 with over 4,000 circuit ministers and over 1 million members of the church. So they really, got a following that way with this circuit. And that's what they did. And by that time, they were starting to build churches and communities, so they didn't have to do the traveling ministers so much. Noah retired from this circus when he married me in 1808. I lived in Rockingham County, Virginia with my uncle Benjamin and Aunt Sarah. My mother died when I was a year old, and my dad died about 3 years later. So I went to live with my brother's, my dad's brother's family, and that's where I lived when I met Noah when he was on the circuit. One of my sisters lived with me too. Her name was Ruth. I was the youngest of the girls. There was 4 girls in my family, and my 2 older sisters went and lived with another family that was an aunt and uncle of ours also, and we did see them some. There's a story too that I don't remember because I was a little girl at the time, but Ebenezer, my father, Ebenezer Hinton, lived in Rockingham County, Virginia, and he owned slaves. And in his will, and I was only 3 when this happened, he left 2 slaves to me as a little girl. So they went with me to my uncle's farm. But when I married Noah, he didn't believe in slavery, so he wouldn't take them with us. And I don't know what happened to them. They were like part of our family because they did help raise me and things too. So it was kind of hard for me, but he didn't believe in slavery, so we couldn't take him with him, and I lost track of them. And we did have a son a year and a half after we were married, and his name is John Hinton Fidler. And he was the oldest of our children. We had 2 more little boys right after that, 1810 and 1811, and they both passed away when they were just babies, so that was really hard for us at that time. My husband had quit the circuit, and he was started the church in Staunton, Virginia. And I don't know if it has any relation to the Staunton here at all or not, but it was in Staunton, Virginia, where we lived for 3 years when he's still recorded as the first minister at that church. It was the Methodist Episcopal Church, Staunton, Virginia. It's now called the Central. I actually have picture of, there's a plaque on the church that actually says, you know, it was, his name is not on here, but there's a there goes all my cards. Thank you. Yep. I'm glad I got them numbered, you guys. Okay, I know where I am now, I think. I'm almost done. Yeah, I got it. I just won't look for anything else. Okay, well, after our sons passed away, the two little boys, we decided that we were going to move on west. Some of our family had moved on west, and my sister Ruth decided that she would come with us too. This was the sister that I grew up with on the farm with my aunt and uncle, and she was married by that time to Andrew Lear. And we decided that we were going to move on to Licking County, Ohio. And it's a little town called Newark. All log cabins when we were there, and we lived there the longest we lived anywhere. That was 24 years we lived in Licking County in Newark. And we did have other children. We had 6 more sons and 4 more daughters. So we were up to 11 kids, so that was quite a few. Well, those 10 were born there. Since Noah was no longer on the circuit, he was a minister there in Licking County. He was also an associate judge there, and he farmed. And the boys helped the farm, and the girls helped me on the farm, and we had 130 acres there, and that's what we did most of the time. 1828. Noah and his brother John, he was one of the other circuit ministers. He had traveled with us also to Licking County, and our father had passed away in New Jersey, and we had gotten a letter from our mother and said she wanted us to come and pick her up. That she wanted to see the rest of the family because a lot of them had moved with us this direction. So Reverend John and Noah got on their horses and rode back to New Jersey and picked up Grandma Anna and brought her back with them to Newark. She passed away, Grandma Anna passed away in 1834. 1835, we missed our friends and family. We thought we'd move on west. We went to Bell Fountain and we were there for just a year, and then we moved on to Miami County, and that's how we ended up here. Our kids were growing up by then. We had children that moved to Missouri and Illinois. Just after we moved here to Troy, we had our last son. I was 47 years old, and my husband Noah was 58. So he was a surprise, but and that made 12 kids actually for us at that point. And well, 2 of these, a lot of the children were around here. And the reason I brought some of these things are because one of my sons was a portrait painter. And this is actually a portrait, if you want to look at this, is a portrait of Reverend Noah that his son Erasmus Fidler, he lived in Tip City and was born, or had his family there and lived there his entire life. He's buried in Tip City. But this is Noah Fidler, was painted 2 years before he passed away. It was painted in 1847. And then here's some other, this was actually kind of a odd profession for somebody to have in the 1800s, but his son also painted these pictures. I don't know who these people are, but his son also painted these. They could be relatives too, I don't know, because it didn't say who they were. It just said portrait of a man, portrait of a woman, and 1847, those were labeled also. But his signature is on there too. Reverend Thornton Fidler, that was our youngest son, the one that we had when I was 47. He was a minister in West Milton and also in Tip City at the Methodist Church. So he lived here his entire life too, and is buried not far from here. Now I'm going to put this stuff down so I don't drop it. It was flying again. And I've already shown you these things. This portrait, I'm actually the fifth great granddaughter of this man. So that's how I know so much about him. But the story that this actually hangs in my in our den, and this is a copy. Now the original portrait is about 24 by 36, so it's quite big. But this is a copy of that. And the way I found this is so weird. The way I found this was I just Googled his name. We moved here in 2020 from Brookville. And I Googled his name and this picture came up. And I thought, well, how can there be a picture of this guy? And I found out it was a portrait and it had gone up for auction somewhere. So I called the auction house and they said, oh, it's already sold. And I said, was there any way you can tell me, who it sold to so that I could talk to him? And he said, well, I'll call the man and see if, he'll call you. So he called. It was quite a while later that he called, and so we bought the picture. So I have this picture. But yeah, he's buried here. Does anybody have any questions about anything at all or not? My name is Pam Melton, by the way. I was a school teacher for 40 years. Not a preacher. Kind of. Just ask my kids. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you.